This video goes over creating a simple Revit model from scratch for analysis in Sefaira. I'll use Revit's mass model and model by face tools and point out a few things to keep in mind along the way. Now I've already created a simple mass model and I've loaded it into a new project. I've also created floors or added floors to this mass using the Mass Floors tool. You'll also note that I've mass modeled a couple of neighboring buildings that will provide shading on the main building that I want to analyze. Now, because all I care about is the shading from these buildings, I have not added floors to them. Mass models are not recognized or analyzed by Sefaira, so I'll use the model by face tools to turn this into a proper Revit model with wall, floor, window, and roof families. Let's start out by adding floors. I'll use the floor by face function, and I'll just use a generic 12-inch floor. You can use any of the types that you like. As long as it's a floor family, it will be analyzed as such by Sefaira. And I'll go ahead and select the floors of this building. Now, one thing that you do want to be careful of is that you only select floor elements and you don't accidentally model roofs as floors or any non-floor element as a floor. Once you've selected the floors and only the floors, you can create the floor elements. There we go. And now we'll do the same thing for the roofs. So I'll go ahead and click model by face for roof. I'll just use a generic 12-inch roof and similarly select the roof surfaces here. Now when we go to this model, this roof surface along the back here, let me just point something out. You'll notice that this surface is broken here where the floor transitions to a roof. And that's one thing just to be cognizant of is when you're doing a mass model, sometimes it can be easy in conditions like this to have that roof surface accidentally continue all the way through. Obviously you wouldn't want that. That would overestimate the amount of roof for your energy model. So make sure that your roofs are split at the boundaries, and then we'll go ahead and create our roofs. Now that boundary issue also applies to floors where they encounter the edges of the envelope. So if you had balconies, for instance, or any type of floor element that was outside the building envelope, you would just want to make sure that that was split at the envelope and model it as two separate pieces. So the balcony piece would be separate from the interior floor plate. And the reason is that will allow you to then come back and tag that exterior element as shading down the road. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Now that we've modeled roofs and floors, let's go ahead and add some walls and curtain walls. I'm going to start out, I'm going to do our north and south walls here as curtain wall systems. Let's go ahead and select all of these. And then I'll do the same for walls. Again, I'm just using generic components, but any wall family will work equally well for Sefaira analysis. Let's make sure that we get all the walls filled in. Let's get these guys back here. If any of the walls were not modeled, that of course would underestimate the heat gains and losses that you would be getting through that surface when you do the energy model. Now one other thing I'm going to use the walls for is to model a few of the walls of these context buildings. Now I'm not going to model all of them. I'm actually only going to model the ones that are going to provide shading directly on the main building. The other surfaces simply don't matter from an analysis standpoint. And then finally, I'm going to add some windows to these solid walls. Let's go to the Architecture tab, a window. And what you notice is that I have loaded in some very simple Sefaira windows. And these are just super simple windows that will run very quickly when you do analysis. If you want to use them, you can download these yourself from the Sefaira knowledge base. Just search for an article titled Suggested Revit Window Family, and you can download the whole family. Now your standard Revit window families down here would work as well. It's just that they have a few more planes, and the general rule of thumb is that the more planes that you have, the longer it will take to analyze. So the simpler element that you can use, the faster the model will run. And because this is early stage and I really just want to do a lot of very rapid analysis, I'm going to keep this as lightweight as I possibly can. I'm not being very careful with these windows, but you get the idea. You can go ahead and add as many or as few as you want. One final thing that you should know about windows is that on occasion custom window families can cause issues because there can sometimes be a large number of planes in each component, and so you quickly reach a plane limit in the model. So best to avoid custom window families. Either use the standard ones or simplified ones like the Sefaira ones. So at this point we have a complete model. We've added floors and walls and roofs and windows. At this point I'm going to go ahead and go into the Sefaira plugin and generate views in order to just double check that everything is being identified correctly. Now what this does is it creates a few new 3D views in the project browser here, and it will color code the elements based on what it's identified. So you can see in green the wall elements here, the curtain walls and windows are blue. I'm just going to look at the energy analysis view because what I care about primarily here is energy. I go into more detail on all of these views in other videos, so I won't spend much time on it now. One thing I will point out is that once you've generated views, then we can go back and tag elements as shading elements. So in this case I have these context buildings, at least a few walls of them that I've modeled. So I'll go ahead and select those walls. And then if I come down to the very bottom of the properties pane, you'll see a couple tick boxes here. Ignore for Sefaira and shading for Sefaira. In this case I want shading, so I'll go ahead, click that and hit apply. You'll notice the color coding of those has changed to a dark blue. So they are being recognized as shading. You also may have noticed that there was an ignore for Sefaira option there. You would use that if, for example, if you had modeled an exterior plaza, perhaps with a floor element, that does not need to be included in analysis at all, so you can simply ignore it. One other note about shading is you could model shading elements if you like at this point. You could use floor or roof elements and then tag them as shading like we just did. However, for early design analysis like this, it's often easier to use the parametric analysis capabilities inside the Sefaira web application because you can explore a lot more options a lot faster than if you have to model each one independently. So once we've checked that our model is correct, we are now ready to analyze, either by opening up the real-time analysis plugin and doing it directly from Revit, or by uploading this model to the Sefaira web application. And there you have it, a simple and accurate energy model in just a few minutes.